On today's episode of the Fourth and Long Podcast, you will get my overrated and underrated win totals for the 2026 college football season, as well as graded quarterback rooms and some chaos scenarios for the Big Ten and the SEC. Let's jump right into the win totals without wasting any time. So we start at the top with Notre Dame, 11.5. I don't think that's overrated or underrated. I think they've got Notre Dame. If I was going to say something about Notre Dame's win total being 11.5, I think you could justify moving it up to maybe 12, and that would still be fine. They do have a few big games on their schedule this year. Navy, BYU, and then, of course, their so-called ACC schedule. So I don't think that Notre Dame's win totals either overrated or underrated. Texas Tech at 10.5. I think that's a slight bit overrated now that they won't have Brandon Sorsby. I would have said if Sorsby was there, I would have said this is the perfect number. But now that they don't have Sorsby and it's going to be probably Will Hammond as the starting quarterback for them, I would say this is just a smidge bit overrated. And I think they're inflating their win total a little bit too much. Will Hammond's coming off an ACL injury, and we don't know what he's going to look like. So give me overrated on Texas Tech's win total. Miami at 10.5. Miami fans, you're going to hate me for this. I think they're overrating y'all too much after being in the national championship game last year. I think this is an overrated win total. And here's what. Yes, you did get Darian Mensah, but you lost a lot on defense. You lost Keontae Scott. You lost Key Mesidor. You lost Ruben Bain. On offense, you lost Carson Beck. You do replace him with Darian Mensah. But in the receiving room, who's going to step up? You did lose a couple receivers, and CJ Daniels and a couple other guys. So who's going to step up there? That's why I think your win total is a little bit too inflated. The next two, Indiana and Oregon. Indiana, I would say 10.5. I think they should be in the same category as Notre Dame. So I would say Indiana's win total is a little bit underrated. Yes, they did lose Fernando Mendoza to the NFL, but they replaced him with Josh Hoover. And this is year 3 of Kirk Cignetti. It doesn't seem like Indiana's going to take a step back. I know people want them to, but I don't think they will. Oregon at 10.5. I'm going to say the same thing that I said about Notre Dame about Oregon. I think you could talk me into saying that Oregon's win total is a little underrated because they do have Evan Stewart coming back, Dante Moore's coming back. You got a freshman in DeCorian Moore coming in, and a few transfers coming in. So you could talk me into saying that Oregon's win total is a little bit underneath where it should be. Georgia at 9.5. I've learned my lesson on saying their win total is overrated because it's not. And I believe it's the first time I'm going to say this about Georgia. I think 9.5, I think that's too low for them. I think that's a little bit underrated. until the Gutter Stockton's coming back. Yeah, a couple good offensive players coming back. Yes, you are replacing 3 receivers: Colby Young, Zachariah Branch, and I believe one more. And you're replacing your tight end, Oscar Dell. But as we know, these big programs, they don't rebuild, they reload. And that's what Georgia's done. And I think their win total is a little bit underrated. Ohio State at 9.5. Okay. I'm a Buckeye fan, diehard Buckeye fan here. But I'm going to be honest. I don't agree with this MGM Sportsbook here. 9.5. I feel like they're kind of underrating Ohio State. So I feel like Ohio State's win total is being underrated because of all the talent they lost last year. Sonny Styles, Lorenzo Styles, Caleb Downs, Carnell Tate, the other guys on defense they lost. But they do return Kenyatta Jackson. They did lose CJ Hicks to the portal. They did lose Brian Hartline. But I do like to hire Arthur Smith. And Matt Patricia's going into his 3rd year, I believe, as the defense coordinator for Ohio State. And again, Ohio State just reloads a receiver. This year you got Brandon Ennis, you got Chris Henry Jr., you got Jeremiah Smith, you got Jameer Brown coming in next year, you got Brock Boyd. So that, to me, Ohio State's win total is a little bit underrated. We go down the list. Texas at 9.5. What are people going to learn? That Texas, this win total, 9.5 for Texas. I really want to be generous here and say it's underrated. But then again, it could also be a little overrated. So it's a little bit of both. The reason it might be underrated is because they play Ohio State week 2. If they win that game, there's a very good shot that they could probably get to 9 wins. But you flip the coin, and if it lands on tails and they lose to Ohio State like they did last year, the chances are they could be under that 9 wins and be at 8, go 8-4. I'm going to say, to me, it's underrated, and here is the reasoning. They went out and upgraded in the portal at wide receiver. They brought in Cam Coleman. They brought in some defensive upgrades because we know what happened on defense last year for them. Their defense last year was not very good toward the end of the year. They lost to a bad Florida team. They got blown out by A&M. I believe they got blown out, but they did lose to A&M. No, they beat A&M, I believe. But again, it's Texas, so we'll see. SMU, 8.5 wins. I am going to say that is underrated because it's SMU and they returned Kevin Jennings and Rhett Lashley's back. SMU shocked people last year, and I believe they could shock some more people this year. So I'm underrating their win total a little bit at 8.5. I think they could easily take the over on that win total. Utah at 8.5 as well. Devin Dampier's back, coach, but he keeps everybody. He keeps most of the guys from last year's team in house. They didn't lose a lot in the portal. Next is Penn State at 8.5. And ladies and gentlemen, it is no more big game James Franklin. It is now the Matt Campbell era. And you look at Penn State's schedule. They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Oregon. They do play Michigan. So they play one of the three, and they play, I believe, Indiana. So they play 2 out of the 4 big boys in the Big Ten. If they can win those 2 games, I could easily see them being over that 8.5, that 8-win total. So give me underrated on their win total. Penn State's got one of the easier schedules in the Big Ten this year. Like I said, no Ohio State, no Oregon. Now you slide down a little more. Texas A&M at 8.5 wins. They made the playoff last year. I think I would say I agree. This is perfect placement for A&M. I don't think it's overrated. I don't think it's underrated. I think it's just right with their win total. Now we get to Alabama. 8.5 wins. Overrated. Here's why. You don't have a quarterback. I know what Bama fans are going to say in the comments, but we have Kalen DeBoer. What has Kalen DeBoer proved in 2 years? That he can't make the playoff. Even with Ty Simpson for the first 2 years that he was the Alabama head coach. And that's why y'all want him gone. So I'm going to say this is overrated. And let me finish my explanation. Keelan Russell and Austin Mack are your 2 choices for quarterback. Are you going to start the highly talented 5-star in Keelan Russell? Or are you going to start a guy that was with DeBoer at Washington and Austin Mack? Regardless of who you start, neither guy has much experience. So that's, to me, and you lost a lot in the draft last year. You lost a lot of guys in the NFL draft. But it is Alabama, so they have the budget, they have the NIL to reload. I their win total, but I could be blasphemous wrong. BYU at 8.5. They're another team. They made Kansas State. I think I'm going to say BYU's win total is a little, like just a smidge bit underrated for the pristine fact that they bring everybody back this year. Sataki's back for another year. Bear Bachmeier's back. So get underrated. Kansas State, same thing, kind of underrated. They got a new head coach. Colin Klein takes over at K-State as a head coach. LSU, 8.5 wins. I'm going to say underrated. Lane Kiffin's now the coach. They brought in Sam Levitt. They brought in a lot of guys from the transfer portal. So I think we can see LSU win more than 8 games. USC at 8.5. If they could, I'm going to say this is just perfectly, it's not overrated or underrated. It's a tweener because it could be overrated because they could totally flop this season and Lincoln Riley gets fired. Or it could be underrated. They win more than that 8 games and they end up making the playoff. Now we get to Michigan. 8.5 wins. I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm doing this as non-biased as I can about Michigan. I think their win total is overrated. Here's why. entire new coaching staff, Bryce Underwood going into his second year. There's already doubts about if Bryce Underwood is going to work in the new system. And college football fans and Michigan fans especially, in the comments, please tell me how you feel about Michigan's win total being at 8.5. I'm going to say, like I said, it's overrated because we don't know if we're going to get a better, improved Bryce Underwood. Okay, here we go. So, Ole Miss's win total sits at 7.5. I think they're underrating it a lot because they lost Lane Kiffin. And they did lose. Trinidad Chambliss is back. So I'm going to say it's underrated. I think they win more than the 7 games. Houston. I think Houston can win more than 7 games too. So I'm going to say most of these guys that are at 7.5, their win total is underrated. Even Oklahoma, even Iowa. So you get past Virginia. All those guys are underrated with their win total. Iowa. And here's the saying. They're that pest, that bug that you smack, that you think, oh, they're gone. No. I'm sorry. They're not gone. They're still there. Their win total at 7.5, I think that's a slap in the face. They got a decently good quarterback now. Kirk Ferentz is still the head coach. Give me underrated for their win total. Oklahoma, same thing. Clemson. I hate to do this to Clemson fans, but I'm going to say your win total's a little overrated because you have a new quarterback. Dabo's finally using the portal, but you still play in the tank conference where it is possible you could win more than that 7 games. But week 1, you play LSU, who I just talked about a minute ago. And I think you're going to lose to LSU. Tennessee sitting at 7.5. And I have to be fair on this one because I don't want to get yelled at by Tennessee fans. I think the 7.5 wins is criminally underrated. Yes, I know you got a new quarterback, either Faison Brandon or George McIntyre. But it is Josh Heupel. And I believe George McIntyre is going to be the starter this year. And y'all will be just fine. I think you can win more than that 7 games. NC State has 7.5 wins. Overrated. I don't know how Dave Doran keeps getting away with it, but it's overrated. Arizona. I'm going to do a quick run. So 7.5 wins, underrated. Illinois, 7.5 wins, overrated. Virginia Tech with James Franklin, 6.5 their win total in year 1. Give me underrated. I think they can win more than 6 games. TCU, 6.5 wins, underrated. Wisconsin, underrated depending on how good their quarterback play is. Missouri, 6.5 wins, overrated. Arizona State, underrated at 6.5. Auburn, with Alex Golesh, underrated. They could be a sleeper in the SEC. UCLA, 6.5 wins, underrated. Georgia Tech, underrated at 6.5 wins. Cal, overrated at 6.5 wins. South Carolina at 6.5. I kind of like. They have a bunch of playmakers coming back. Dylan Stewart coming back on defense. Give me underrated. Nebraska. I want to be generous here. Underrated. And we'll do a few more. We'll stop at West Virginia. Minnesota 6.5 wins. Overrated. We know what the underrated. I think this is the year PJ Fleck finally figures it out. Drake Lindsey's at quarterback. Give me underrated. Florida State 6.5 wins. Overrated. Here's why. They have not been able to get good quarterback play from guys they get out of the portal. Example, this year, they got a transfer commit from Ashton Daniels. Not very good. He didn't last at Auburn, and he didn't last at Stanford. So if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. Baylor, 6.5 wins, underrated. And the final one, West Virginia. Underrated at 5.5. Whole new team again. Michael Hawkins is probably going to be the starter for the first week of the season. And later in the show, I will be giving you quarterback rankings. I will be grading every college football team's quarterback room. Now we get to some chaos scenarios in the SEC and the Big Ten. And we start with the Big Ten, and we start with chaos scenario number 1, which is basically just chalk across the board. Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana all go 11-1. Ohio State beats Oregon. Indiana beats Ohio State, and Oregon beats Michigan, which is a common opponent for Ohio State because they play they play Michigan every year. So that is chaos scenario number 1 in the Big Ten. Chaos scenario number 1 in the SEC is kind of as follows. You got the top 3, Georgia, A&M, and Ole Miss, lose to each other, which, okay, we know how that works. But one of those 3 teams makes it to the SEC championship game. We get to chaos scenario number 2 in the Big Ten, mild chaos. And that is Penn State finishes second in the Big Ten in year 1 under Matt Campbell. Ohio State finishes third. And with Penn State finishing second, you would ask, Alec, who's going to finish first in the Big Ten in scenario number 2? That, my friends, would be the grand question. And the answer is Nebraska. No, not Nebraska. Indiana finishes first in the Big Ten in scenario number 2. Chaos scenario number 2 in the SEC. Mild chaos. One of Georgia or Ole Miss does not, and let me reemphasize this, does not win the SEC in 2026. And Kentucky, in this scenario, Kentucky finishes top 5 in the SEC in year 1 under Will Stein. And guess what? Chaos, Big Ten, chaos scenario 3. All out chaos. Nebraska wins the Big Ten. Ohio State loses more than 3 games. Michigan State wins more games than Michigan. And Michigan State, with Pat Fitzgerald in year 1, makes the Big Ten title game against Nebraska. In this scenario, you have Ohio State missing the Big Ten title game. You have Indiana missing the Big Ten title game. You have Penn State potentially missing the Big Ten title game. And I bet you're waiting to hear what chaos scenario 3 is in the SEC. Well, I'm going to give it to you right now. SEC, chaos scenario 3. Absolute chaos. Florida fans are going to like this. The Gators win the SEC in 2026 in John Summerall's first year. SEC title game. Tennessee, Florida. So in this scenario, Alabama goes 8-4. A&M goes 8-4 again. Texas goes 8-4, 7-5. And Arch has a bad year. Kentucky ends up finishing top 5. And I'm going to throw a bonus chaos scenario. The SEC only gets 2 teams into the college football playoff in 2026. And that would be the winner of the SEC championship game and maybe the runner-up in the SEC. But now, we're going to get to the fun part. It's time to grade QB rooms. And we're going to start in the ACC. And we are going to start with the unfortunate reality that is Boston College. And in Boston College's QB room, I don't see a lot of potential. I mean, you do have a couple of freshmen in there, but I'm going to give, and I'm sorry if there is some Boston College fans that watch the show, but you're not going to like what I'm about to grade your quarterback room. I'm giving it a D-. And here's the reason it gets a D-. There's nothing that There's nothing that impresses me in your quarterback room for this year. And I don't like saying that, but it's the truth. There's nothing that moves the needle here for me in your quarterback room. So a D-. We're going to do 3 conferences today and then 4 conferences on tomorrow's show. So the ACC, the Big Ten, the SEC are today. Next, we go to Cal in their quarterback room for 2026. And I'm giving Cal's quarterback room a B-. And it's mostly because of Jaron Curioso Sagapotoli, JKS. And I like what I saw from him in his freshman campaign. And I think there's a lot of promise with JKS as long as he doesn't get poached by another Power 4 school. I'm going to go back to Clemson. Don't worry. We're doing Duke first. And Duke, Duke, I'm giving your QB room a grade of incomplete because I see a lot of potential in your QB room. Issue is, who's your starter? Because you lost Darian Minson to Miami. So who is your starting quarterback going to be? If you had a starting quarterback, I would probably say a C-, but it's incomplete grade right now. Now we go to Clemson. And Clemson, I'm giving your quarterback room a B minus because you have a veteran in there and Christopher Vizina, who has been there a while. He sat behind Klubnik the last couple years, who just got drafted this year by the Jets. So I like your quarterback room, but are you going to get enough good play out of your QB room in order to pass the test? Now we go to Florida State because we already did Duke. Florida State Seminoles quarterback room this year. Florida State. And I kind of talked about it with your win total. I talked about it with your win total. I just don't. I do not trust this quarterback room at all. And I know it's showing running backs. QBs. Kevin Sperry, it intrigues me. Redshirt freshman. I think if Ashton Daniels doesn't do good, you could see Kevin Sperry take over the starting job. But this quarterback room, overall, C+. I mean, Ashton Daniels just... Ashton Daniels just doesn't... I'm not enthused by Ashton Daniels. I'm sorry. I'm just not. He doesn't move the needle at all. And on my podcast tomorrow night at 5:15 with Brad, we will be going over win totals again, but we will be saying over or under on the win totals this time, compared to what you heard on my show today. We go to Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech's QB room, yikes. Alberto Mendoza, okay. I'm going to give Georgia Tech's QB room a B+. Alberto Mendoza sat behind his brother last year at Indiana. Did get a little bit of playing time, but he didn't get enough to where I would say this is an A or an A+ quarterback room. It's a B+ for me. Brett Key's going to get everything he can out of Alberto Mendoza. And I still think it's a good situation to be in if you are Georgia Tech. Louisville's quarterback room. And can we concisely say that Jeff Brom is a QB whisperer? I will give Louisville's quarterback room just a grade of a B. Because Lincoln, I like the addition of Lincoln Keenholz. He's finally going to get the start. But behind him, you have, I would assume Ryan Zimmerman is a scholarship quarterback. You have Mason Fields, who's a freshman. You have Brigo Cherry, who's a freshman, and then 2 other junior quarterbacks. Well, no, 1 other quarterback in the room, and Devin Winder. But Liga Keynote's a starter. It gets a B. I'm fine with that quarterback room. Miami. Let's go click on it. I really didn't want to, but they ended up getting Darian Mensah from Duke. I'm giving Miami's quarterback room an A+. I love that they did have to pay $10 million to get Darian Mensah, but it is they keep that mantra of we're going to bring in a transfer quarterback. If Mensah does good this year, he's gone. He's going to the NFL. And I do like the upside of Luke Nickel. Watch some of his tape. Do like Damon Coleman, another freshman, and Judd Anderson. So they got some depth at quarterback if Mensah does end up getting hurt. Which, again, on my show, we never wish injuries upon anybody. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, we will finish the ACC quarterback room grades tomorrow on the show, as well as going over the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, and the American. So be looking out for that on tomorrow's show. But one more thing. Don't forget to visit the website. We just put the updated MLB prospect, my updated MLB prospect rankings on the website, sportsbreakdown.net. If you've enjoyed the video, please remember subscribe, turn on notifications, and don't forget tomorrow at 11 o'clock to be right back here at the same spot for tomorrow's episode and tomorrow night at 5:15. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.